mind. Take down the film watchers and nerds all at once. I am one of those, skeptical of status quo. Lazy and to the bone, no doubt about it. Sometimes.
Yo, so I want to make more videos, right? So I figured try and get rookie profiles out this off season, obviously as quick as possible. As soon as I've got the database updated, still kind of working on hooking up the combine data. It's been a bit difficult, and there was recently a big update for Excel, or at least I got the update, and it slowed everything down. I don't know. I don't want to overly nerd you, but there's a lot of settings you can do to make sheets run quicker if you're doing a lot in them, and I haven't dug into this new version of it to reset. I've been tweaking the version I had just before this a lot over the years, as you can imagine, and now I have to retweak everything. So yeah, things are running a little slower right now, but kind of a spare of the moment video. There's a lot of players I'm trying to figure out from the NFL season, and one of the ones high on the list, well, just in general, is the Chiefs. Like I've been saying randomly on podcasts, I recently did it ended up being a 2-hour Ask Me Anything on a Discord channel called the Dynasty movement, I think. Yeah. And it came up there again, like figuring out rookie running backs, which ones to buy. And my general answer is you want running backs on the come up in general. And so I like all these rookie running backs, and as I said in the podcast, I kind of just want the cheapest ones. But it's not always that simple. You do have to, make decisions between all of them and have them ranked, as it were. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire was actually first on my list, and I was doing some research, and I ended up looking into him. So I thought I'd kind of talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire for a while, if that's all right with you, just random as a YouTube video, but there you go. So the best comparison to a Chiefs running back I have for Clyde Edwards-Helaire's usage in 2020 is actually Spencer Ware, which isn't great, and not the Spencer Ware that we didn't like, but the Spencer Ware we did like back in 2016. If you remember, there was a big, every now and again we have a buy Andy Reid's movement on Twitter. So back in 2016, Spencer Ware came on towards the latter half of the season, as I remember, but he developed a 56% opportunity share, and everyone was like, it doesn't matter, he's great, they don't spend money on running backs anyway. And what you see to the left of me, or be by your perspective, is the opportunity share for number one running backs in KC going back to, whenever. We can go back to 2000, but we're not gonna. And as you can see, his opportunity share in 2020 looks a lot more like Clyde Edwards-Helaire than it does anyone else's. Kareem Hunt a little bit a couple years ago as well. It will be fun to say Clyde Edwards-Helaire's had the best uses in Kansas City as a running back since Kareem Hunt, just to trigger specifically Jake Anderson, mostly. If you're listening, Jake, I'm trying to trigger you. But it's pretty clear to me that Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't Kareem Hunt, which we said and could say before the draft. But his usage was similar to the last time we saw him in Kansas City, at least, and before that, Spencer Ware. So, actually, probably a more accurate comparison is probably Spencer Ware, but with draft capital, which means he's not going anywhere. He actually performed pretty well on the usage. You can look at that a few different ways. I like using expected points. This is probably well known at this point, but you can see that Spencer Ware was having like 13.8 expected points per game. It's a volume metric. That's how much fantasy volume they were giving him, and fantasy points over expected is how well he was performing on that. As you can see, Clyde was a little below average on the usage he was actually given. Spencer Ware was ran about right at average, so I think that's a fairer comparison, and it's one way to point out that Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't Kareem Hunt. It wasn't Kareem Hunt this year. But again, I think that draft capital matters. I think the player is pretty much what we thought he was. I did that over him and Jonathan Taylor in my rookie ranks pretty much back and forth all off season. I think I ended with Clyde at 1 because I lent on the safety and the receiving usage. But I'm still kind of right there, honestly. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has the... I hate to wiggle out of it typically with Dynasty, but I think he's got the highest floor. I don't think he's going in Kansas City. I think his usage is pretty good. 14 points per game is actually above average for where he finished. I think he finishes running back 18 or so. Position rank, running back 22. Okay, a little worse. But a top 12 running back on average since 2014, for example, averages around 14 expected points per game. Running back 12 averages around that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire underperformed that, as the fantasy points over expected indicates here in the little table-y thing I've got. But his volume was more like a top 12 running back, and there are actually a few players above him in overall position rank, so full PPR points, that didn't have that kind of volume this year. And you can name a few probably off the top of your head, like Antonio Gibson, who were really high on, obviously, but he didn't receive the type of workload we would expect. Even in the range that he was in, let alone as a top 12 running back. We know they switched out with Adrian Peterson a lot and stuff like that. So that isn't Antonio Gibson shade. That's just saying Clyde Edwards-Helaire is already co-opting the type of volume that we want. If you break that down by the running game and the receiving game, which is obviously where we live these days, you can see that his expected points majoritively were split between running and receiving, where he's much more getting more opportunity in the rushing game than the receiving game, which is unlike someone like J.D. McKissick, for example, who also had a higher expected points per game than we'd expect for where he finished an overall positional score. Plus, he's young, he's got draft capital, and we believe him to be skilled, unlike J.D. McKissick, and that separates him out from some other players that you could put on that list. David Johnson is also someone that had around 14 expected points per game, and while I love David Johnson, and continue to expect him to be decent in fantasy. I like all guys, even at running back. He's not in the same value tier for me. And so Clyde Edwards-Helaire and actually Miles Sanders are the only two that really fit that profile in the top 24 of having a higher than expected points per game for their overall positional rank. Doing pretty decent, and we expect them to pretty much keep being skilled over the next few years and having a similar role, although Philadelphia is probably a different nightmare we'll have to talk about another time. Now, the nightmare of Kansas City, and it shows up more in the running back usage than it does anywhere else, is that, I don't know, I've been saying on podcasts here and there that Kansas City has been weird this year, and I don't really know how to explain that. And sometimes you don't exactly know where to look, especially when you're an idiot like me who doesn't understand most things. So I was listening to some breakdowns of the game, and one of the best descriptions was their games this year. One of the best descriptions I've heard of them. I can't even remember where I read it. I think it was a comment on something I was reading, which is that they're what are they? They're big hitters who strike out a lot. So baseball metaphor, pretty cool. But it makes a lot of sense in that they look incredibly efficient as an offense, but it's because they will use every opportunity they get to go 15 yards down the field. They'll take all 4 downs if they've got to. Patrick Mahomes' completion percentage on third downs and long, for example, is just stuff dreams are made of, mostly at quarterback. And that's another side point about Patrick Mahomes, by the way. His entire game seems to be built around the fact he has... he's phenomenal player. He's a really good... This is not Patrick Mahomes' shade, but a lot of the way he plays is built around the fact that he has an incredible arm strength with accuracy. He's Drew Brees if he could throw the ball as far as anyone who's ever thrown the ball effortlessly. And that's fine and great, and I don't expect to fall off at all, but he will have to develop some other parts of his game as he ages. Although, having said that, Aaron Rodgers can still sling it down the field. I think he's got one of the highest measures of arm strength in the NFL, if memory serves, in terms of speed and distance. But, and yeah, you're talking 35, 36 is where we start to say, oh, maybe that arm strength isn't all it's used to. So it's not even immediate, but I would like to see him, not be obsessed with dropping back 13 steps behind the offensive line and just hoping to escape the edge rushers if he has to. Maybe a little bit. Which goes a little bit to, I don't expect them different from the US offense. I think they're going to keep doing what they're doing, so I don't think, in terms of running backs, the usage in the running game is going to change. But when you're using every down to try and go 15 yards down the field, if you have to, even when it's third and long or whatever else, that does shrink the opportunity in the rushing game for someone like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who operates as the main back. It's not necessarily as much of he's small so he doesn't run the ball. I think they may have drafted him because he's small and they're not planning to run the ball or grind out the yardage through the rushing game is probably a better way of saying it. But this also seems to be a feature of Andy Reid's offense. If you look back on this list, see that Kareem Hunt, obviously, and Jamal Charles, and we're all getting decent rushing yard, expected points per game in the rushing yardage, and this is all Andy Reid's usage plan. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire seems to operate a middle ground between the expectations of like Jamal Charles when he played that one game, that's a one-game season there, just below Spencer Ware, but slightly before that he's 11 rushing expected points per game, and Kareem Hunt has 10 or 9 expected points per game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is slightly under that. He does have a higher than expected usage in the receiving game, if we're using the expectation of what Andy Reid offense has done it. Jamal Charles is the only one who really beat him in that area because Jamal Charles is Jamal freaking Charles, okay? But this is a feature of the Andy Reid offense in terms of the usage that they are trying to choose to give their running backs. But I'm not scared of it. It provides a really safe floor. And again, on average, that kind of usage, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire can have just a little bit more luck, and to that point, if you look at those expected points per games and consider touchdowns, he was a little unlucky instead of it being about performance in terms of getting 220 yards per touchdown. And there was a large stretch this season where literally I was wondering if Clyde Edwards-Helaire can get rushing touchdowns, because he's getting usage, and he's getting usage in the red zone, but again, where they like to pass the ball, it doesn't often come through the rushing game when they get into the red zone. So, in sum, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a buy. I would still have him in the joint top 2, if you will, of this rushing back class. The only reason that I don't have him below that is because I would put James Robinson in that mix with Jonathan Taylor and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I don't have to, because right now he's being drafted as like the running back 18 or so. I think he's the lowest drafted rookie running back from this class, and he had the best season. Or actually, because of the end of the season, I think Jonathan Taylor's season might actually rank as the best season for a rookie running back this year. But I try not to forget things that happened longer than a week ago, and James Robinson was doing that. But that's, again, a separate conversation. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still in that mix for me. He's above Dobbins, he's above Swift, because I've already seen the usage. I do not expect it to go anywhere, and there are some reasons to expect that he could be more productive in the exact same role, which is probably what Kansas City plans for him going forward. A few extra rushing touchdowns, because touchdowns are nothing but variance, and same with receiving touchdowns. But his overall usage is that of a top 12 running back on average since 2014 in PPR scoring. So that's where I value him, and right now I don't think he's being valued at that. Now, am I going out and sending offers on Clyde Edwards-Helaire? No, because I suck at trades, guys. But if I was trading for running backs right now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be on the list. I think he's a little undervalued, and I do think he's going to be one of those running backs we need and care about over the next few years. Now, I can't see top 5 upside, which is really the running backs we're chasing in fantasy. Specifically because I don't expect the usage to change. It's hard to see that highest of high ceilings, but a lot of the reasons you get into there can be variance, right? So it's not that it's impossible. And again, going to Patrick Mahomes' game and the fact that teams can change scheme and can change the way they're operating, depending on what happens in this playoff run, you could see more of a slide towards the rushing game, because we've seen Andy Reid do that with multi-skilled players like Clyde Edwards-Helaire before. So there is a possibility. I'd say the average expectation is for him to be an upside top 12 running back. That's not the thing we're chasing, but it is a thing we're chasing, and right now I don't think Dynasty ADP reflects that. It's probably the worst time in the world to buy running backs, or the best time in the world to buy running backs. I can't remember how trade rules go, because I suck at trades. But that's where I'm at in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that's what I've seen his usage. Now, again, the weirdness I'm seeing in Kansas City, having done a little bit of, getting secondary opinions on what's going on, seems to be... It's just from the experience of the games, man. It feels like there's nothing. I thought this was the best team in the league, what's happening, and then it all happens in spurts, and it was just leaving a weird taste in my mouth of why isn't the best team in sports being better to watch. And it makes a lot more sense, honestly, having gone and taken in the opinion, specifically of film evaluators that look at Patrick Mahomes' games, and the way Andy Reid is calling those games as well. It makes a little bit more sense now. And honestly, that solves some of the riddle, or at least my evaluation of what the running back game is in Kansas City. And I do like the fact that his expected points were slightly higher than you would expect. In fact, again, the average of a top 12 running back, not the top 22 running back or whatever he finished as an overall point scorer this season. So, yeah, I guess that's it. Is that how you do a video? I think I'm at the end of it. Yeah, alright. So that's just my opinion on Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the end of the 2020 season. Yeah, if you enjoyed it, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. And see you later. That's about it. Okay, shake it. I'll see you next time. I'm going to try and get, obviously, rookie profiles out. Whenever I get the database, I'll try and do at least one a week. But I'm thinking I'm going to try and add a second video a week, especially since it will be the off-season, right? No work there. And do something else, play a video that's not specifically about rookies, because we don't do enough NFL work in the off-season. And that's something I want to correct, at least in my own process, as well as looking at rookies. I want to start re-evaluating players from the 2020 season, so doing that on the podcast a little bit. But again, everyone there wants to talk about rookies, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you again next time, or on Saturdays when I do a podcast, or on Mondays when I do a live stream somewhere. Anyway, appreciate it. Bye.
Do you have the time to listen to me grind? Take down the film watchers and nerds on